Hello, welcome to discussion week 3. Today we're going to talk about supply and demand. This is the core materials from the entire quarter, because this is the foundation of a lot of economic theory, a lot of later, if you're economics majors, you're going to learn a lot from just from supply and demand market alone. And microeconomics deals a lot with finding the equilibrium of the market. So this is a very core concept and a very fundamental part of economics. So I think it's going to be on the midterm. I think there are probably going to be some. I'm not sure how many or what's the portion of it, but I think there are definitely going to be some questions, or a handful of questions about this part on the midterm. Okay, so let's look at demand first. So when we talk about supply and demand, we always want to draw out the supply and demand curve. So when you, of course, you're doing the test online, so you probably wouldn't, deal with drawing the graphs on your own. But usually, especially in the future, if you are an econ major, you probably want to take more econ classes, and someday you're going to be in a physical class setting, and you are probably going to take a test. And I guess this is a good time for you to just build up this good foundation, knows how to draw the supply and demand graph. And you want to draw the graph very carefully. You want to draw, you want to label it very clearly, because I think throughout the years, many students always make a mistake that they usually just draw the supply and demand curve like this and think that's fine. And I understand what you mean, but this is technically, this could be anything. This could be speed and time, right? This could be whatever you call it, because you didn't label it. So when you draw the supply and demand curve, you always want to label it. So we have price on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis. So this is the first step. And we want to draw out the demand curve. So intuitively speaking, we know that price and the quantity and price should be inversely correlated, right? Because if, say that you are in I don't know, you're in the supermarket, you're doing grocery shopping, and you're buying apples. If this apple is like $100, you probably don't want to $100 per pound. You probably don't want to buy it, right? Because it's just too expensive. Maybe you want to buy some of that. Maybe some special or like organic, whatever type of apples. It's just super expensive, but we can afford it. Maybe once in a while, it's like a treatment, right? It's like treat yourself with some healthy food. So, but not a lot, because the price is super high. So this is like $100, okay? But then if we decrease the price, now it's like $80. Maybe you want to buy a little bit more, right? Because now I can afford more of these type of apples. Say when it's $100, I only want to buy 1 pound. When it's $80, I want to buy 2 pounds. And we already see this downward sloping trend, but we're not so sure yet. So let me draw. Actually, we're already sure, because we have 2 points, right? But let me just draw more points. So now, if the price keeps decreasing, 60, 40, and goes on, so on. Eventually, we're gonna keep buying more, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, etc. Right? So we're gonna get more points, more doubts, and we connect them. We have a downward sloping curve for demand curve. And intuitively, it makes sense, right? Whatever goods you have, when it's expensive, you probably don't want to buy a lot of it. When it's cheap, you probably want to buy a lot of it, because you can afford it. So intuitively, it makes sense. Then what will affect this curve? What will move this curve? What will shift this curve? Well, we need to be really careful with movement and shift. When we talk about movement, we're talking about on the same curve, but a different dot. Okay, it could be from this x1 move to x2. Okay, this is movement. This is not a shift. So when we say how did the curve move? Well, it's actually just, it didn't really move anywhere. It didn't really shift anywhere. It's just on this exact same curve, we move from one point to the other. What will cause a movement? It's already there. It's already in the graph. Price, right? A price will cause a movement, but we care more about shift. How do we shift the curve? How do we, shift the entire curve, maybe downward or maybe upward? How does that happen? I think in the lecture we already introduced a couple of the reasons that we can shift the curve, and I'm just gonna pick someone. Maybe preference, right? Say if people care more about their health and they love organic apples now, then even though it's still expensive, say it's still $100 right now, but people are willing to buy more because they have this stronger desire to purchase these type of apples because it's healthy. People have a different preference now. If you go back to 100 years ago and you tell them, oh, well, this apple is, you don't even say $100, this apple is like $2 per pound and it's organic, they'll be like, wait, you're crazy. What does organic mean and why is it so expensive, right? But now after 100 years, we develop this concept of organic, we develop a concept of healthy diet, where we care more about our health. So people change their preference across the time. So we have a different demand curve now, right? And technology can also change the demand curve. Oh, wait. Maybe not technology, but wealth. Wealth can also change your demand curve. Say you have $1 million. Then of course you probably don't care that much if you purchase the apples with $100 per pound or $2 per pound, right? Because you just don't care that much. $100 to you is not that much. But if you only, let's say you're from a household that only has, I don't know, maybe $1,000 in your bank account right now, that's your whole asset. You probably wouldn't want any of the apples that is selling at $100 per pound, right? So your wealth determines a lot of the demand curve. If the wealth of the entire population is decreasing, then the demand curve is going to decrease. But if the wealth of the entire population is increasing, then apparently the demand curve is going to shift up, or people demand more, right? So be careful when we say shift up or shift down. I also sometimes say shift left or shift right. So this is shift left or down. This is shift right or shift up. So as you can see, if the demand curve is increasing, then it's shifting right or up. Okay? If the demand curve is decreasing, then it's shift to the left or down. Whichever way you prefer to say, it's up to you, but as long as you know that, if it's as long as you make sense if it's increasing or decreasing. Alright? So we continue to draw out the supply curve. Again, we label it very clearly. We know this is prices on the y-axis and quantities on the x-axis. And intuitively, we know that it must be an upward sloping curve. Why? Well, if you are the producer, you're selling the products right now. If, say, we ask you to sell your product at I don't know, maybe for free, 0, you probably don't want to sell any of them, right? You probably want to sell 0. because we're profit driven, we care about profits. If I'm selling at $0, of course I'm not earning any profits. Then why sell at all, right? I can simply just take a break. But say now, if your product is getting more and more popular, and is the price is increasing, of course you probably want to sell more, because you know that by selling more you can get more profits. And for the same logic, if the price keep increasing and then you keep selling more, thus you have an upward sloping curve. So price and quantity, they're positively correlated in the supply curve. And something that could shift supply curve or move supply curve, well, again, movement is already in the graph. We know that a movement is caused by the price. It's nothing interesting. Shift could be caused by a lot of other things. And again, the lecture already gave you a lot of examples. Here I'm just going to give you one or two. Say maybe labor or wage, right? Because when you produce products, it's not coming from nowhere, right? It's not coming out of the air. Someone needs to produce it, right? So labor is one of the big input in producing stuff, right? So if wage is really high, then it costs you a lot to just simply produce the product. You probably don't want to supply a lot, right? And another example could be technology. If technology is the one thing, then it may be cheaper to produce the products, right? For example, right now I think it's probably cheaper to produce I don't know, maybe anything, clothing, housing supplies, anything, because of the technology is the one thing. But maybe going back 200 years ago, or maybe even 300 years ago, it's just impossible to produce that many clothes for a short period of time. Right now we have probably new clothes, whatever, those fashion magazines every week or every quarter or whatever, because we can produce that much. But back then it's simply impossible. The technology wasn't available at the moment to just for you to produce that much good. The production level is simply low. Was simply low. So how do we describe the change in the supply curve? When it shifts, say, to the left, what does it mean? When it shifts to the right, what does it mean, right? So shift left or up, in this case, is decreasing. Shift right or down, in this case, is increasing. So supply curve is increasing when the curve is shifting right or shifting down. Decreasing when the curve is shifting left or shifting up. Okay? Now I draw both supply curve and demand curve, but it's not quite what I want, because I'm only having two curves, one supply and one demand, on the different graphs. That's not what we care about usually. Okay, we care about the equilibrium in the market. So we need to combine them together. Now a full supply and demand curve. And we label both curve very carefully. We need to make sure that which curve is which one, and also their units, price, and quantity. Okay? And now, since they already intersect with each other, we care about this intersection. When supply equals to demand, this point is very specific. It's very special. It's called equilibrium. And the corresponding quantity is going to be the market equilibrium quantity. The corresponding price is going to be the market equilibrium price. And we put a star to indicate that it's the equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price because it's special. So this is the basic of the supply and demand curve. Okay? But this is interesting, this is the foundation of it. But we care about more of that. We care about change. We care about change, right? The shift of it and what's caused the shift. So let's get into more questions or possible questions that could show up in the midterm. It's not gonna be on the midterm exactly, but it's just possible the similar format, similar type of questions. Okay, say I don't know. Let me say you're from a car company. Okay, the company has minimum and small sedan. Okay, so the car company produces these two type of cars, and you are the specialist in predicting the future market. And now we know that people have low marriage rate, which means they don't want to get married that often, and tend to have less keys. So what will happen to the market of Mini One? So when you look at in this question, the first step is always draw out the original graph, the original supply and demand curve, supply and demand graph, right? Doesn't matter whatever is happening right now. The original one is always going to be the same, right? We'll have our price, quantity, and the downward sloping demand curve and upper sloping supply curve, right? And we have the corresponding equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. All right, and now we look at what is changing right now. Well, people have a low marriage rate and people tend to have less keys. And what will happen to the market of mini ones, right? We know that mini ones is really big, usually for families. Family have maybe 2 keys or even more, 3 keys, or I don't know, 4. I guess that's too many. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know how many keys that people tend to have. I think probably 1 or 2. That's already big enough family. But anyway, people own mini ones because they have relatively larger size of family. But right now, people tend to have less keys. What's going to happen to the minimum market, right? And we look at this question, we think about, what is this change impacting? Which curve is impacted? Let's look at the supply curve first. Am I affecting the supply curve? Well, people tend to have less keys. This seems like doesn't really change the labor, doesn't really change the wage, doesn't really change the production format, right? It's not saying that people have less keys and the production is going to get affected. The supply curve is not changing, right? Then the demand curve. Well, of course people want to change. Of course demand curve is going to change, right? Because people want to have less keys, so they probably wouldn't want to buy as many mini ones as before. Maybe 10 years ago, they tend to buy every family, each household has 1 mini one. But right now, the smaller household doesn't even need a mini one, right? So the demand is definitely decreasing. We need to make sure that is it a movement or is it a shift? Well, now we know that people tend to buy less mini ones. It's a preference. It's a change in the preference, right? The people's preference changed. Their desire to purchase mini ones is decreasing. Their preference changed. So the demand is decreasing. And it's not a movement, but a shift. So how do we change the curve? Well, we already know that if it's decreasing in the demand curve, the demand curve is going to shift to the left, right? And we use a prime to indicate that it's a second demand curve, or the demand curve after change. And we draw, since the supply curve didn't change, the new intersection becomes the new equilibrium. The corresponding price is the, say, P star star is the new equilibrium price, and the corresponding quantity is the new equilibrium quantity. Right? So what happens to the market? Well, if it's in, I'm not sure how do we test you in a multiple choice question, but if it's a short answer question, you can definitely answer, well, the demand curve is shifting down, the demand is decreasing, and the market equilibrium price is decreasing, the market equilibrium quantity is decreasing. This is what happened, right? But maybe in a multiple choice question, we can give you, I don't know, maybe say A, price is decreasing and quantity is increasing. B, quantity is decreasing and price is increasing. And C, D, so on and so forth. So still the same type of question, but just asking in a different format, okay? And then another question could be, what happened to the smaller car, or the 4-door sedan? 4-door sedans market. Well, since you only have these two type of cars, right? What type of goods they are? I'm not sure if we talked about it. I think we did, but maybe we didn't. But they're substitutes. So for the substitute good, it means that you can use one of them to substitute each other, right? If I'm not buying the medium ones, I'm buying the smaller car. If I'm not buying the smaller car, I'm buying medium one, right? So now, if the demand for the medium one is decreasing, then I know for sure the demand in the smaller cars market is going to increase, right? But first, let me draw the original graph. Price, quantity, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, right? And this is the original equilibrium price and original equilibrium quantity. We always draw the original graph with clear labels so that we know which curve is which one and which point is what point. Okay? And now I know the changes already since I already explained. So I know the demand for the smaller car is gonna shift to the right or increase. What's gonna happen to the supply curve? Well, nothing, because my preference, the change in the preference of customers is not really affecting the supply curve, right? So the new equilibrium quantity and new equilibrium price is indicated as follows. So I know that demand curve increases. Market equilibrium price increases. Market equilibrium quantity also increases. The upward arrow means increasing, and the downward arrow indicates decreasing. I'm only doing this because I'm lazy, and if you're doing that in a test, especially and again, this is a multiple choice question, so you probably won't encounter that. But later in your, I don't know, in your other classes when you're taking a test, just don't be like this. Don't be lazy. Write down the words. Let me see if I can give you any more examples. So we're still in the same setting, okay? Still we're in the same car company. And now we only care about mean ones. Okay? Say the workers' union asked for an increase in the minimum wage. What's gonna happen? To the minimum market. Okay? So now again, the first step is always draw the original graph. We're already very familiar with this process. And now we look at the change and to see which curve is getting affected by this change. Well, an increase in minimum wage means now the producers will cost more to supply the same good, right? So the supply curve is for sure affected by it. And is it going to be a decrease or increase? Well, since they're asking for an increase in the minimum wage, which means they need to spend more money on the labor, right? So the supply curve is decreasing or shift to the left, and we use a prime to indicate it. And the demand curve isn't changing because the increase in the minimum wage doesn't really affect demand curve. Well, but of course you can think two steps ahead, saying that well, the increase in the minimum wage can increase the wealth level. That's for sure happening at the same time as well. But we don't overcomplicate this question. Let's just look at one change at a time. So the decrease in the supply curve will cause a decrease in the equilibrium quantity, but an increase in the equilibrium price. So the market equilibrium price is increasing, but quantity is decreasing. And supply curve shifts right, supply decreases. Shift to the right. Shift to the left, sorry. So now we look at both changes in the demand curve and supply curve. And again, you're doing the test in the multiple choice question, so you probably wouldn't really need to draw out the graphs on your own, but this is the thinking pattern when you encounter these type of question. Whatever is changing and what's going to be affected in the market, the first step is always draw the original graph and then think about, well, which curve is getting affected? Is it a supply curve, is it demand curve, or is it both? Well, sometimes both could be affected, right? Well, why don't we just actually look at it? Say that the increase in the minimum wage did increase people's wealth level. Then for sure the demand curve is going to increase because now I'm more wealthy, right? I'm wealthier. I don't care that much anymore. At the same price, I'm willing to buy more stuffs. So the demand curve is increasing. D prime. So what's going to happen to the market equilibrium price and market equilibrium quantity? Well, one thing is for sure. The price must increase. Let me use P prime to indicate it. P prime is for sure greater than P star, the original market equilibrium price. But what about quantity? Well, a lot of people will say, oh, let me see if I can just go back. Yeah. Well, a lot of people will say it's obviously decreasing. Comparing with Q star, Q prime is decreasing. Oh, it's true. But it's only true because I draw it out this way. What if I can be a little bit dramatic, drawing it in this way? Well, for sure the price is increasing, there's no argument there. But now, quantity is also increasing. So now Q prime is greater than Q star. Or we can actually manipulate the graph and make it so that the quantity doesn't change. Q star equals to Q prime. So which one is correct? Well, all of them are correct. Because based on the way that I'm drawing it, we may have different scenarios. So how do we decide the market quantity? We don't decide it. Market quantity, the new equilibrium market quantity, the change in the new equilibrium market quantity is unclear, or I can say depends on the change depends on the magnitude of the change in the demand curve. Okay? So once the changes are going two ways, it definitely complicates the matter a little bit. But it's not necessarily harder. You just need to, think maybe extra step. I think that's all for today's discussion. And if, as always, I think the midterm is around the corner, right? So if you have any questions, you can always email me or schedule time. I think the office hours tomorrow, either tomorrow or Tuesday. I forgot, but just email me to schedule to see me, whatever. If you want to talk to me, if you want to ask any last minute question before the midterm, okay? And yeah, good luck on the midterm. Bye.